Hey everyone, welcome back to the Growing Together podcast with me, Sonny Vasquez.
And me, Cesar Santos.
A podcast where we talk about everything under the sun related to growth and becoming the best version of yourself. Growth truly encompasses so many different aspects of our life, and we are constantly learning and growing through our experiences. So that's kind of why Cesar and I chose this topic to be what we talk about on our podcast, because it opens up the door for a wide variety of opportunities that we can discuss based off our experiences. As you may know if you've listened before, we're not experts in any of this at all. We're not claiming to be. We're just speaking on our experiences and hoping that it helps someone else who might have dealt with the same thing, or just to have a vulnerable conversation. Before we get into today's episode, how are you feeling this morning, Cesar?
I'm feeling pretty good. I felt like I got plenty of sleep last night, for sure. I'm not starting it off with, of course, having coffee, because we always have that. I always say that. But, we had some good sleep last night. And yeah, we're here. I just love being in this podcast, on this podcast. So it's always good to start off our weekends like this. So.
Yeah, I will say I got some much needed sleep this weekend. I'm just chronically exhausted, so I'm always glad to just rest and not do anything at all. I do like going out and doing things, but I'm also so tired, so sometimes it's not as enjoyable when I'm just exhausted. Yeah. But we got some things to do. We got to get Cesar an outfit for a wedding that we're going to. Maybe get some Yogurtland because it's right by a Yogurtland.
Oh yeah, and then finish up some projects before we head out.
The week starts, and we'll be leaving on Thursday for a wedding in Florida. So that's exciting. But today's episode, I didn't take a lot of notes on this. I figured that we just see where the conversation goes. But I want to talk about title. I was thinking is gonna be, what's stopping you? What's stopping you from doing what you want to be doing? What's stopping you from following your passions? What's stopping you from following your dreams? Okay. And I think that I also chose this because I think you can speak on this a little bit, because I think it took you a little bit to get to where you are and to actually put more time and effort into what you're doing. But I guess I'll start out. For me, I think I'll kind of bring up. So on Instagram, when I posted something about you should go after your passions, a lot of people are like, you're so naive. Not everyone can do that. And I do agree. It's not something that just happens seamlessly, and not everyone has the opportunity at this moment to do that. There are people who have financial needs, so a job has to be a means to an end, right? But I'm also someone that wants to I want to enjoy my job, and I want to do what I'm passionate about. And I think because I grew up with parents who I saw worked so incredibly hard at jobs that they didn't necessarily like, it also reinforced the idea that I want to be in a different position than they're in. But also it's scary. It's scary to go after what you actually want. When I was working at Target, it wasn't my dream job, but being in the position I was at, I figured it was a safe way to continue to move up because I was already doing well there. They almost kind of convinced me that this was the only path for my future. Mm-hmm. So I went and kind of just played the part. I continued to try to move up until I realized this wasn't going to be something that I would enjoy, nor at one point I wasn't going to be successful because I wasn't passionate about it. I think passion and success are somewhat aligned, because if you're passionate about something, you're more likely to succeed in that thing because you're driven and you're more motivated when doing it. But the other thing too is that in my mind I'm what if, this is what I thought to myself, what if I'm not good at anything else? What if what I'm passionate about is not something that I'm actually good at? And in my mind, I'm convincing myself that I'm not actually good at these things. I just think I'm good at these things, and it won't work out if I go after it. Have you ever felt like that? Am I actually good at this?
Man, there's a word for that exact feeling, because I've felt that.
I think it's doubt. Isn't it doubt?
Doubt, but it's it's not like it's not anything bad. It's normal. It's a normal, I think, human reaction. Because I know plenty of books I read where like successful, billionaires now, like they started off like with the business, whether it was them selling real estate or them creating some kind of technology, some new technology, and they all had that doubt of whether it was being like not given to them, but somebody in their environment was telling them like you're not going to make it, like you're better off doing XYZ versus.
The thing is, I don't think there was anyone in my life telling me. I know for some situations that's a good thing that you brought up. People do have others in their life where they're like, what you're wanting to do is stupid, you're not going to be successful, it's not smart, and that can also make you feel some type of way and make you not want to go after what you actually want. But for me, I think it was all in my head too. It was like, if I pivot and I change to what I actually want to do, what if I'm not successful? What if I like screw my life up? Why take something? Don't fix what's like broken, right? Like I was making money at my job. I was making what I needed to survive. Why change? Why risk that? Because I think there's so much risk involved,
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of risk when it comes to doing anything new, especially if it's like a new venture where like you don't know. I'm not to say you don't know what's going to happen if you pivot, for example. Like let's say, for example, you're in retail and you pivoted over to what you went to school for.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like you didn't really know not to say you didn't really know what you're doing, but like I
didn't have any like professional experience in that. Yeah. Like that was something that scared me too. I was like, no one's gonna want to hire me because I did have the degree, but I was
in the camp. You went to the
and I did the digital marketing boot camp. But I still felt that because I didn't have experience, people weren't gonna hire me, and there was that fear still because I had never worked professionally. I knew that I enjoyed it, that I wasn't going to be successful because I don't know what it's actually like to work in the industry. And I think for me, I actually had a little bit easier because at least I had that background in marketing and like I studied it in school.
Yeah.
But there's some people who, I hear so many stories, and I think I mentioned this before, studied biology in college, got their bachelor's, and then they're in their field wanting to work, like doing the work that they thought they wanted, and it's nothing what they wanted. So they have to pivot, and I think making that choice to pivot is scary. It's risky because you have to, there's always that like fear it's not going to work out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, that same situation. I remember we talked about this on a previous podcast where he had like my brother Noah, he had friends who like went to engineering school, got their master's or bachelor's, and now they're doing real estate or they're doing something entirely different. Like they pivoted, and every time I hear a story about that, when someone went to school for something and then like decided to do something else, like whether it was teaching and then they're like, yeah, I'm not going to do teaching anymore. I think it's because they've realized like there's a passion that they have that's for something else, and maybe they don't even know what it is yet, but they just know
I think so too. You also think, here's my hot take is what I would think. When you're going to school, and if you're thinking about your future after school, you're thinking logically, and you might be thinking about money as well. You're thinking about stability and money and how you're going to make ends meet after you get this degree, right?
Yeah.
And so I think some people go after what's going to provide them a stable future, which is smart because I crave stability. I crave being able to cover my bills, being able to be well off. But when you graduate and you get into it, you then feel like a sort of emptiness because you're not fulfilling your needs of an individual, of like being passionate about doing something you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And I think some people realize what they want to do and what they need to do don't always align.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. Like, especially, like, for example, I didn't go to school. I did a bunch of different jobs, from working from a warehouse to working in a automotive retail space to working at a bank, and I knew every step of the way that in those positions that I had that's not what I wanted to do. Even though like I knew there were some passionate people in each of those industries that were like that was the only thing they knew how to do really. Then they're really good at it too. You know, like whatever the position was. but I knew like I can be better than me being here. Not to say I'm a better person than who they are. I'm just saying more of like
That's not what you wanted for you.
No, it's not what I wanted for myself. Because again, those positions, people, especially in these industries out there, people need. There's people that are needed in those industries. So, but I knew that I can do something better than this. I have passions. I love to create things. Like I love to make things with my hands. I love to work on technology and all that. So like I knew I needed to pivot. And it was scary, obviously, because there's a lot of things that needed to happen in order for me to make that move, to decide like, all right, I'm quitting. Like I'm out, guys. See you later,
But the thing too is like when you quit a job to finally do something you actually want to do, it's so thrilling. Like I remember
I remember when you left Target, right?
Yeah, when I left Target, I felt like a weight off my shoulders and I was excited. I was scared because there's endless opportunity out there, but it's like, what happens if this doesn't work out and I end up back where I don't want to be,
Yeah.
And I just think it's hard I just think there's so much doubt, fear, and anxiety when you're going through the idea of even doing what you want to do.
No, there is. There's a lot of, the first fear I know I can let you know of how I felt is like the fear of failure immediately. Like, cause that's what it's in your mind constantly, especially if you're around people who are telling you that like you're stick to whatever you were doing or whatever the case is. And the next one is like how are you going to provide for yourself from there on, So unless you already had some kind of business set up beforehand and were like already getting funds that were equal to what you were doing before, and this is why like I kind of understand with the people that have families, especially if you have like kids, if you're a single parent, whatever the case is, like it's harder for them because they have to think about their kids.
Yeah.
I follow this guy on I've been following him on YouTube and Instagram for a while. His name is JS Films, and he has a big YouTube channel. Blew up doing the Unreal Engine stuff that I've been learning from him, and he posted like a few days ago saying like he can either leave the military now because apparently he's in the military, which I had no idea, or go and like go all in on YouTube and like this content creation thing. But what's holding him, not to say it's holding him back, but what he has to constantly think about is his kids, because he has kids. So like, is what he's doing on YouTube going to continue to grow, or it's like a risk, And,
I think that goes down to having like supportive people around you, because, for instance, you currently don't make anything off of YouTube.
Yeah.
And like we do this podcast, we don't make anything off this podcast. Maybe someday we will. And you do obviously some freelance work to get some income, but it's not what you were making before. But because I believe that you can make something of this, I'm like, okay, well, if you're gonna do it, give it all you got. Don't half-ass it. Like just, whole-ass it. I think it was scary because I'm like, obviously we have our own bills and we need to provide for ourselves, but at the same time, I don't want you to be like 10 years down the line and hate what you do, you know? And I think with like in that situation where you have kids, it is a difficult decision because it's like, it's not just you have to think about, it's your family. Yeah. And so when there's other people in the mix, you have to have everyone on board. Because I know, like, for instance, we were watching For All Mankind, and in like the second or maybe even the first season, the guy's wife, Ed's wife, gets so nervous when he's in space, and he's like, oh, so like he's not going to go to space anymore. But then she realizes that's what he, like, that's who he is. He needs to do it. And so she's like, you know what, you need to do this because it's best for you. But for her, she gets upset about it because even after she tells him to do it, because it makes her anxious, it scares her, and like there's always these what ifs and unknowns. So I think in situations like that, or like where you're having to make a decision that's going to impact not just you but your family, everyone has to be fully on board or it's a no-go. Like if it's not fully 100% on board, it's a no-go. And I think, at the other end though, I do think if you have a dream, the person you're with should be supportive. That's actually something that I feel I love about our relationship is that if I come to you with an idea or something I want to do, you're more like, okay, so how can we make it happen? And you're not like, Sonny, this is stupid. Sonny, this isn't going to work. You're more like, okay, let's do it. And I think so many people out there, because they're scared or because they, they just don't think things like you can do what you're passionate about. They're just not like that, And I've noticed that with people I even surround myself with. It's like I don't know. I feel like I'm just a dreamer, and to some people, they just see that as being like really naive.
I don't know if it's because of specifically like my parents would always let us know, like, you can be who you can become like what you like dream of. Like when we were kids, I remember I told my mom I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I can't do any of that because I'm colorblind. So I quickly threw away that dream. But I knew I could pick up skills and like do things. Along the way, don't get me wrong. Like there were people that were like, like that's stupid, that's dumb. Like exactly what you're saying. Like like people in the comment section, right?
Yeah.
And you'll find a lot of that along the way. And I don't know if it was because of how they were raised. They were never thought to think bigger than themselves, that maybe that's why.
Well, I think it has to do with culture too.
Obviously,
where you are in the world, or like, I think there are situations where it's not even an option. You aren't in a place to do any of that, and it might be because you have other people relying on you. It might be because it's not culturally okay for you to do that. It'll be seen as like,
taboo or something.
Like taboo. Yeah. I mean, even now, like, I feel like up until recently, when people would quit their job to do something they're passionate about, it was seen as like, what is that person doing? Like, are they okay? Are they gonna, oh, that's risky. It wasn't seen as like, oh my gosh, good for her. And I feel like more recently we see those stories where it's like, oh, it's like I stopped doing what I hated to do what I loved. And you see that more often than you did before. I feel like I didn't see that a lot growing up. I feel like when I was growing up, it still was very much like, I don't know, I feel like we didn't really talk about doing the things that are available now.
Oh no, that's true. I would honestly say, like, I knew when I was growing up, especially again, we're going to these public schools, and the school system, at least how I think it works, is like they want you to go through it and you go into some kind of vocation or technical program, or go to school to work for the government, to work for another corporation or something, doing, I don't know, like maybe you're an accountant. Again, there's nothing wrong with doing any of those things, but since like it was always very linear in those, there was never like the option of like, hey, you can also start a business, because when I was
when I
was in high school, we had like FBA, was it future business FBA or something like that, I forget what it's called, but there was never, I would say, like there was never any more than that. Just like, get your business degree, like go to school, get your MBA. Like,
we didn't even have that. The thing is, I remember this because my sister got invited. Our school had this program. I don't remember what it was, but if you had good grades, granted I had good grades, but sometimes, I think it was based off like overall GPA, and they would invite you to like a trip like abroad, and I was like, that's so messed up that you only invite certain kids. Not that obviously everyone can't go, but like
it wasn't free though, right?
No, you'd have to pay, but to make it open to like most people who could pay, like to see the world, because I feel like the people seeing the world aren't the ones who were like studious, doing great in school. They're the ones who are dreamers, who believe in themselves, who believe that there's more out there. Who and that doesn't always correlate with the smartest people either, so I thought that was like weird.
That was interesting
too. But yeah, we didn't talk about that in school, of like and granted, some of these opportunities that are available today weren't available when I was in school. I mean, I'm sure like the position I worked might have been available or was fairly new that I work now, but SEO, but like there's so much more opportunity. It's also, I feel like there's also less barriers to entry in some things. there's a lot of online courses to help you get different jobs that you want to. So I feel like it's easier to get into a new industry, which does motivate people to change. But still, with all the accessibility, it's still like, okay, what do I do now?
Yeah.
You know? Is it worth it? Is it gonna be, I don't know, yeah, is it gonna be worth it in the end, or am I gonna be just as unhappy? I feel like something I've always been afraid of when it came to my career and pursuing my passions is, one, is anything gonna come of this? Two, what happens if I fail? But like, three, what if this doesn't work out? You know?
And that's the scary bit.
Yeah, it's like, what if I wasted all this time and none of this works out? And I feel like this comes from like my need to want to like please people, especially my parents. It's like, I don't want to disappoint people. I don't want to feel like I'm a failure. And I think when I'm still really young, that was always at the top of mind. Up until I graduated college, I was thinking of what my parents thought. I was like, I've got to make them proud. I've got to do what they want me to do. And then I realized that none of that was ever going to make me happy. Like, I think I talked about this before. My dad wanted me to major in like something completely different.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And I was like, no. I was like, I'm just going to figure it out. Like, figure out what I like, what I do. And luckily, like, you know, I'm in a position where I'm not like struggling. But yeah, I'm full of fear when it comes to making those big life decisions.
And I think that's normal. I think it's good to have. I mean, it's fun. It's funny because like on our last episode, our last podcast, we were talking about like the movie Inside Out. Yeah. And when I was editing it, it made a lot of sense, especially after watching the movie. Finally watched it after that, and like it's good to have fear. It's good to have all these feelings.
Yeah, fear serves a purpose. Like, obviously, I feel like there's a good level of fear. I feel like mine's always in overdrive. Like, thinking of, like, what if, for instance, like, when we get in the car, I'm always so scared that we're going to get into an accident. And I have no reason. I mean, I do have reason to believe that it could happen, but
you've been in one. That's why, yeah.
So every single time I'm nervous, and like a certain level of that fear is good because it makes me a safer driver. But at the same time, too much fear could make it bad because I could make not as great decisions, you know, when I'm driving. But I also, going back to the topic, I saw this video, and it's I think his name is Rainn Wilson. He plays Dwight in The Office.
Okay.
He was like, the way that we should be using our 20s, and I know you're 29, so you don't really got much of your 20s left, but I've got a couple years left in my 20s, is as this, like, testing period. Like, not as, like, no one has it figured out in their 20s, that we should really use it as, like, a testing period to, like, go through and figure out what we like. It's not about knowing what we want to do. It's about testing everything, like, not being scared to take those, you know,
those like leaps.
Yeah, the leaps of faith, like, I like this, let's try this. Oh, I like this, I like this. I feel like there's so much pressure to get it all figured out, like, right when you graduate, and then we don't take the time to do what we actually want to do. And actually, I was talking to my old roommate, Delsa, and she, for one, she's amazing. She's so smart and so incredible. I love her. But I had recently caught up with all my roommates, like, over the phone. And Delsa did, like, the very logical thing. You know, she went to college, and she got her master's. Well, she got her bachelor's, and she got her master's. Then she got this job. I think it's in some island. I always forget what island it is.
Not the Galapagos, but
it's not the Galapagos.
Yeah,
it's
some islands.
What are the, like, U.S. territories? I don't think it's the Virgin Islands.
No, I was going to say the Virgin Islands. Those were the ones I was thinking about.
I can't remember what islands, but it's one of the U.S. territory islands. But she's doing, like, coral reef restoration, doing what she wanted to do, right? But she was telling how she did feel like, you know, she did everything kind of, like, the logical way. And, like, she didn't make as many decisions, like, for herself or really try anything else. You know, didn't go out there and make, like, spontaneous decisions. And I think she was telling me that she needs, like, once her, like, contract is over, she was going to do more of that. And I was like, that's smart because, you know, you start to feel like, have I lived, you know?
You start to think, like, have I Yeah, not like have you lived? That's the best way to put it.
Cesar literally just repeats what I say.
No, because I was
listening back to some clips of us, and like when I'll say something, Cesar will repeat the exact same back to me. He's like, yeah, like
in a different way, but
no, in the same way, literally in the same way. How is that any different? Cesar's like, yeah, I think you think it's an original thought when you say it, and then you're like, oh wait, I think this is what.
No,
Sonny just said.
I was trying to think of a different way to what you were saying. Not to say the exact same thing, but just I mean it's a good thing it's a good thing to have critical thinking skills, you know. It's a good thing to think about, hey, like, you know,
I mean, you're a logical thinker, so
I mean, I think anyone can be a logical thinker. This is my opinion on that, is that there's logic and then there's emotion. If we have too much emotion into whatever subject it is that you're thinking about, of course your emotions are going to take over. You're not going to think logically. There's obviously some things that you can't process logically, like love. Like, yes, we talked about a whole episode on love, by the way. Go and watch it or listen to it. And there's certain things you can't quantify, and the things you can't quantify that's where it's, you know, logic, there's reason, and then faith. You just got to have faith in hoping that a good outcome is going to come out of it. And this can go into the whole, like, your job too, or what you're wanting to get into, is like, you can think logically about, hey, should I quit what I'm doing now and pursue my passion? Like, there's logical steps you can take. Maybe you can that can help you get there.
But I don't think it's fully logical, at least not for some people.
Oh no, of course.
Because like, say like right now you work a job and it's you make $150,000 a year, right? But you hate it and you're like, you know, I want to go into this job pays less, pays like maybe 60,000, but I'll be happier. To you, that's a logical decision because you're basing it off an emotion, your happiness and your well-being, which will improve your mental health, improve a lot of areas of life. To someone on the outside looking at the decision you made, they might be like, that's the most illogical decision ever. Yeah. So I feel like even with like in that situation, both people were acting logically based on logic. I feel like logic looks different.
Well, I mean, in that case, like if they can make that sacrifice of like, you know, because I've heard of people getting new positions, like and taking immediately when they get the job, it's like a 20% or 30% pay cut from what they're making before, but they're happier with what they were doing. I forget the positions that I remember reading a story about this, but they're happier. They're well off. They have more time with their family. Like it was done for a specific reason. So I mean, in that case, like you're saying, there's emotion attached to it to help make them make the best decision. Again, not to say that everything can be solved with logic. It can help along the way. It can help you think, you know, critically think for yourself and find out, wait, does that make sense? Or am I just overthinking?
I'm just saying you're lucky that I'm not logical, because if I was logical, I might have not moved here.
There's that too, yeah.
That's what I'm saying, is like logic sometimes like, no, I'm not saying that you don't need logic. I do think you need logic, but I think sometimes I act by my emotions more than I do logic, and sometimes that's bad, you know. It's not seen as a great thing. But I do think the other thing is what stops people is not just, they might get started with what they want to do, whether that be like opening a business or, you know, putting time into something that they're passionate about. I think when it comes to roadblocks and obstacles, when we hit those obstacles, sometimes it makes us want to give up.
Yeah, it feels like, because when you hit like a roadblock, it feels like there's no way, like a roadblock, there's no way moving forward. You know, like, what do you do? But there is a way around. You can go around the roadblock.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is like, not everyone knows how to deal with those situations. You know, not everyone knows like, how am I gonna make this work? For instance, like you've been creating content for probably for most of the year, for like 8 months now on YouTube. And there were a lot of roadblocks there still are, because like we only have so much equipment. Like it looks like we have like a lot of nice stuff, right? But this is really our only like equipment. Like you have your camera that you've had for years. We just got lighting, and obviously we don't have a lot of money to spend on like stuff that could help you do even a better job. So I feel like that was something for you, not that you didn't want to get started, but you're always thinking about.
Yeah,
and for some people, that just might be the reason they don't even start or they don't continue. It's because they're like, oh, I'll never be able to do what I want to do with what I have.
And that's where, I mean, and it's funny that you bring that up specifically because that's kind of like what I've been preaching on my channel is like to start with what you have now. I try to every now and then I'll bring it up in a video towards the end, because like I talk about the practicality of using the equipment you have, whether it's your phone, especially modern phones are so powerful that don't let that stop you. Because towards the beginning, I was just using my phone and my other camera, using the window light because I didn't have a light.
Yeah, natural lighting.
Yeah, natural lighting. I would literally open up all the windows downstairs. We had a desk that you didn't use anymore, and that we were trying to sell at the time.
Yeah.
But I would use that, and like I just ended up getting like a $30 green screen. And like keying myself in, and I ended up realizing, wow, I can build my own studio. I don't have to, physically buy anything. I can make something virtual, and it's something I always wanted to do anyways. And it turns out a lot of people wanted to learn that too. So,
but I think there were situations where I had to tell you that like you need to work with what you have. I think there were situations where you were getting frustrated, where you're like, oh, if I just had this.
Yeah, no, you're right.
And like you've got to work with what you have, and I think it applies to other industries and jobs too. You've got to figure out a way to make what you want to happen with what you currently have access to, you know. If you're in a situation where like you don't have a lot of money to spend, for instance, if you're looking to get into a new industry, you don't have a lot of money to spend, maybe to get a degree, do you have money to spend on like a couple courses? Because that could be your start. There's so many different ways to go about getting to where you want to go. And it's all about thinking like strategically. But I think sometimes people get stuck in their mind where they don't even know what the first step should look like, or they don't know. They might be like, okay, I'm going to get started, and they get to the how. Okay, how am I going to get started? And that can be where you stop, or maybe they get to the how, like, oh, I'm going to do this, but it starts to feel maybe it's not as easy as they thought, or it's difficult, and that can be so disheartening because often we think that because we love something, it should be easy or it should be just seamless, and it's not. Like, even your passions can be a pain in the ass sometimes, or learning what you want to learn can be a pain in the ass. Like, for instance, like I feel like I am a pretty creative person, and I've been trying to learn Photoshop, and I know a little bit of Adobe Premiere, but whenever I go and I spend time doing it, I'm like, oh, I want to learn this, but it's so freaking difficult for me. And I'm like, okay, well, I want to learn this. How do I like make this? Like, it stopped me in the past. I'm like, damn, this is just so freaking tedious, man. But really, no matter what it is, things take time, you know?
Yeah, no matter what skill it is that you want to learn to get to that goal, right? Like, for example, to be a video editor. Let's say your goal is, I want to be a video editor. Well, first you need to learn some sort of video editing platform. There's 3 major ones. So pick one of the 3. And then now it's like actually spend time to learn the platform. And that was the most difficult part of what I was doing years ago. I was using this old video editing platform called Sony Vegas. It's still around apparently, which I had no idea. And I remember everyone was talking about Premiere Pro, and obviously it being a creative cloud-based solution for like all kinds of different industries, but it was kind of expensive, so I didn't have access to it. But once I did get access to it, like I tried it, and then I was like, this is like so confusing. Like, no, I'm just gonna go back.
I think I remember you telling me this. Yeah, I remember when you switched.
And like, I was like, no, I'm going to go back. And then, but I'm like, no, I need to learn this because like there's a reason why this platform is like popping off. This was back in like 2014, maybe 15.
No, you switched. You were using Vegas Pro when I met you, so it was 2017.
About 2017.
You switched in like 2017, yeah.
And then I realized like once I learned where everything's at, like all the different effects, everything you can do within the platform, I realized like, man, this is actually a lot better than Sony Vegas. Yeah. And it's a lot faster. It's a lot more efficient. And it made me a better video editor learning that platform. And then obviously there's different apps that are connected.
Yeah, and had you not learned that, like you wouldn't be able to do some of the stuff you do. You wouldn't do some of the freelance work because everyone is using either Adobe Premiere or Final Cut.
Yeah, or Final Cut. But basically kind of like what I realized out of that journey of transitioning over to using another platform, and even like DaVinci Resolve, which is another video editing platform. Try not to get too technical here, but a lot of them have things that are in common. It's just learning the other things that you might need to learn how to use. But that's what the cool thing about if you do want to be a video editor, there's so many videos now. I remember back in the day when I was trying to learn Premiere, there wasn't that many videos out on like, unless you bought a course that was like $500.
So like that was your other obstacle was like there wasn't access to like, okay, well, how do I learn this? And some people probably would have stopped and been like, there's no good information. Luckily, like in the wired world of the internet now, there's so much information and so many different ways to learn what you want to learn. It's all about taking the time and having like the grit to see it through. And I think that's where we lose people, is seeing the thing through. Because I'll admit, like, there's some things I gave up on. Like, I've definitely, every single year, I'm not going to lie to you guys, because I'm going to be honest. Every single year for the past 3 years, I'm looking at, like, my little vision board right now. I've had Photoshop and Premiere Pro on it to learn. It is August. You don't want to know how much time I've spent actually trying to learn it, because I haven't spent any. Because the other thing is you get so busy. Like, life feels like it gets in the way. The reason we didn't start this podcast, we had all the equipment, is because just everything felt difficult. And then
there's a lot of stuff going on too.
But then we woke up one day and we're like, you know what, we're going to get started. We're going to get started with what we have, and we're going to try to grow it from there, and we'll get better as we go, and we'll get more stuff as we go. But it's all about getting started. Getting started is literally the hardest thing, no matter what. Like, no matter what it is, it's so hard. For instance, me and Cesar started running recently because we used to run all the time. We were avid runners. We were real in shape, and now we're not. So this week we started getting up really early, because the only time I like to run is in the morning because it's too hot in Vegas. And we started running, and we're starting slow with like jogs in the morning, and then, making it at least a mile without stopping, and then doing a cool down. But getting up in the morning is the first obstacle. Being able to get out of bed, put your running shoes on, and go. That's the first obstacle. And then the second obstacle comes when we actually start to jog, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm dying. That's that. I want to stop. And every day in my mind, I'm like, okay, Sonny, you've got to keep going. Like, it's a mental battle. And I feel like that's how it is with a lot of things in life, is it's just a mental battle. As you're in an argument with yourself of, can I do this? Am I capable of doing this? Okay, I am. And you're just like, okay, keep going, keep going, keep going. And it's not any easier if you don't have like a support system around you. If it's just you trying to like go at your dreams alone with no one to tell you, hey, like, or help you too. I think the reason that I've been able to like do what I've wanted and, go after the things I want is because I have people to help me. Like when it came to my job, like I didn't have all the information, but they had training that they could give me and people I could talk to. So that helped me learn like what I needed to be successful. And when it comes to running, I have you, and I mean, I also was an avid runner, but I also have resources to be like, okay, what are great running techniques, or how do you get started? It's also, I think the most important thing too is it's about application. There's a lot of people who read all these books on like whether it's like a self-help book or like how to make money, like passive income, but it's all about how you apply the information.
Yeah.
And I think we sometimes lack that part, is like application.
Yeah, you can learn everything, but if like I was literally talking about this in the last podcast, like you can spend your time reading a book about how to change your life. You finish reading it, you close it, and then you don't apply anything.
It's like you just don't change it.
You're like, oh,
just not changing.
Yeah, it's like,
which is so funny. I think that's funny because when I was in college, I took a couple accounting classes, and they teach you all the foundations, right, of like how to solve different problems. And then the tests are all applying what you've learned. And I always found applying what I've learned as the most difficult thing. It's like I could understand the different parts of what the problem included, but I could never understand how to apply all 3 parts at the same time. And yeah, I still think I struggle with application of applying what I know and what I learn. It's not easy in practice at all.
For me, that's where actually kind of
I think you're really good at application.
I that's one thing when it comes to I'm more of a I remember learning about this in school, like kinesthetic learner, which just means like hands-on. I learned by just like whether it's the keyboard, the mouse, the screen, a car, taking it apart, whatever the case is. And I just learned by doing it, and I can watch the tutorial on somebody. That's the problem with you. I remember I was trying to teach her how to do Premiere Pro, and she was like, watch this one. It's like a basic intro on how to do basic cutting.
Well, no, Cesar would just do it for me, and I'm like, I don't learn that way. I need you to show me how to do it. Like, show me how. Like, I need to watch you, but, like, also, like, tell me what you're doing. Explain every step that you're doing. I'm not really sure what kind of learning type that is. Because I don't like sitting and like watching videos on how to do something. I want someone to sit here and teach me how to do it.
That's a very formal way of learning because that's how you go to school.
Yeah.
You see the teacher tell you writing on a chalkboard or the whatever the board is. Or do you remember when we were kids? At least when I was a kid, we had computer class.
Yeah.
And we learned how to do I remember when I was like in elementary school, how to make a smiley face. We started how to use Paint. How to use Microsoft Paint.
Oh, my computer class was a little bit more advanced than that.
This is like
we were using clip art and taking typing classes. Miss Mavis Beacon and some little. We used. I don't know if it was Paint or like Word art.
Or Word art. That was the other one too.
Yeah, we used to do that.
Yeah, that was
to make little printouts. It was cute.
Basic, simple, and that's where you get started. And that's where I think. That's if you're wanting to make a pivot into anything, you should try to dabble in it somehow. Like whether it's you taking
even if it's on like the side, you don't have to. You don't. I think the biggest thing is some people think they've got to go like full in 100%. Like
for some people they do though.
Some people they got to make that commitment. But I also think that there's things you can do while you're doing
whatever it is
you're providing for yourself, like doing the job that you have to do. I think that there's time you can make on the side to learn other things and then be fully comfortable with pivoting, it's all dependent on who you are as a person. I don't think there's a right way to go about it. For some people, you're like you said, going all in is the only way they're ever going to do it because it puts a lot on the line and it means you have to succeed. And I think for some that's motivation. For others, that's just fear. And like for me, that would be fear.
Taking the baby steps.
Yeah, you gotta take. Some people, I need the baby steps. I take baby steps, I'd say. But I do think going back to like application, Cesar is always like, I feel like once a week, maybe even more, he's coming. Oh, I just learned this. Let me show you. Like, I learned how to do this, and like, even I had Cesar make a birthday video for the CEO of the company I work for because it was his birthday this week. And I told him, like, oh, can you just do this? And, like, Cesar just figures it out, And I think that's a good quality. I think it just comes down to who you are as a person, though, too.
Yeah, if you again, I've talked about this before, but patience.
Paciencia.
Like my mom would say. Patience is the mother of, I think, of all virtues is actually the more of the...
That's not what it says, because Cesar's mom says, paciencia es la madre de las ciencias. That literally translates to patience is the mother of the sciences.
In English.
Yeah. Sounds much better in Spanish.
It does sound much better in Spanish. But, yeah, I mean, if you have enough patience to learn something new, I mean, that's the thing. Some people don't have the patience to learn. Like, they'll have the time. They'll get on it, whatever it is, and they'll be like, they get frustrated. Like, never mind. Like,
sounds like me. Cesar just described me. And not to say I haven't committed to anything that I like to do. Because I do. Like, I think my thing is not that I don't just have patience. It felt majority of my life so far, it felt like I didn't have time. The time commitment. When I was working at Target, I was exhausted and I felt like I didn't have time to commit to any of the things I wanted to do, whether it was learning Photoshop or
that boot camp was the big...
the boot camp was like the biggest time commitment. I was like, I've got to do this. That was the first time I really was honing in on what I wanted to do. And that was a huge time commitment. It was exhausting because it was 3-hour classes, 3 days a week. And yeah, it was a huge time commitment. So I think I also do lack patience though. So sometimes I get frustrated easily by things I don't understand. Like for instance, I remember when I was a kid, I had a little bit of struggle with math. And not that I wasn't good at math, but some things, I feel like what was difficult always made sense to me, but what was easy never made sense. And so my dad would try to help me with my homework at the kitchen table. And my dad didn't know how to explain to me how he got an answer. He would just get the answer. I'm like, I'm not looking for you to do my homework. I'm looking for you to tell me how you got that answer. He was like, I don't know. I just know this is the answer. And I would just be sitting there crying in tears. My mom would call her dad on the phone. He would try to explain the math to me. And it would just be like, I was so frustrated that I didn't understand anything. And it would just make you want to give up. I remember being in high school too. I would sit at tutoring with I was in calculus, and I would sit at tutoring with my teacher almost every lunch period and sometimes after school because I just didn't understand certain things. And it was so frustrating for me. I was just wanting to give up all the time. And I was thinking to myself, I just got to make it through high school and then I go to college and I won't have to know this in college. And then I had accounting in college and I was like, shit. So difficult.
Yeah. I hated accounting. I took 2 classes in accounting when I went to college for a brief 2 semesters. So
you took accounting?
Yeah, that was one of the for what I was trying to get in the community college that I went to. I took 2 accounting classes. So
just cause
that was part of the curriculum in order for me to. I forgot such a long time ago when I was trying to get something in college.
Trying to get something, you don't know what it was.
I forgot what it was.
That's how dedicated you. You don't even know what you were saying.
I didn't even want to go to college when I applied for those classes. I was like, this is just gonna be a waste of money, and I wasted that money.
I wasted that. Yeah. Why? That's a good question. Why didn't you want to go to college?
First of all, I didn't even have the money to go to college, so I had to save up. And at the time, I was working at the bank, and I just didn't see anything interesting in even getting an MBA or
Well, you need a BA first.
Or a BA or whatever the case is.
Bachelor's first. Yeah. An MBA is a master's.
Yeah, or an associate's or whatever the case is that you need before that. But yeah, I just never unless I was going to, the thing is I look back at it now, unless I was going to college for mechanical engineering, because that's the only thing I could actually do. I couldn't do electrical engineering, or computer science. Coding, that would have been something interesting to do, having hindsight 2020, right? But yeah, or cinematography or film, that would have been really interesting to do. But back then I didn't see that. My passions were mechanical and automotive technology. So yeah, I would have done something like that. But yeah,
this is kind of off topic, but do you think because you went to a high school where you focused on automotive, it limited what you thought you could do?
I wouldn't say that it limited me. It just made me focus on that. But then I realized that that's
on nothing else.
Yeah, on anything else. Well, obviously you took everything else, English.
No, but I'm saying that didn't shape you to have any idea of what else you would do after high school because your program was focused on automotive.
Yeah.
So you weren't thinking about college in that way.
No, yeah, I wasn't. I was just focused on that. And then once I realized I kind of don't want to do this. I don't see myself doing this. I kind of pivoted into trying to figure something else out. At the time we had the backpack brand, trying to start that business up off the ground, creating different products. I made all the products. I learned how to sew and design soft goods. And I still love, I want to do that somehow. I don't know. Somehow in the future, I want to somehow implement that, creating bags focused on technology, holding equipment and things like that. Learning 3D printing and stuff. So that's where, that's a really good skill to have, to learn how to design products. But right now I'm focused on video production and producing really cool looking content because I love doing that. That's what I'm passionate about. So.
And helping us with this podcast.
Yeah, and all of this. Yeah, it's all production, getting this desk set up, the computer, learning the limitations of this camera. We had to plug it into my computer and record it. And, the audio, work with what we have,
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So, do you have any words for someone who hasn't started what they want to get started but should?
I would say start like Sonny, baby steps. So if you want to learn Photoshop, for example, you can get a free trial. You know, you don't have to like commit to it. And by the way, because there are free trials out there, and you can learn it and, you know, learn a few things here and there in 30 days or whatnot. And then if you like it, you like it. If you don't, then you don't, you know. There's nothing scary about trying something and then realizing, you know what, it's not what I thought it was going to be. But then also don't give up and get frustrated on if you couldn't get the thing that you wanted to do to be the outcome. Like, you know, sometimes you're like, hey, I have this vision for this thing, and then you go and do it, and you're like, oh man, I didn't picture it. This is how it was going to end up being. How it's going to end up looking like. Don't just give up on that step. Like, learn more, you know, if you can. But that's what I would say. Just don't give up. Have patience.
I think anyone who's afraid to get started with what they truly want to do should really just look at it as an opportunity to grow and become who they want to be. I think when you do what you're passionate about, you're happier, you see a clear difference. I think you can attest to this because I was a very different person when I worked at Target and wasn't doing what I wanted to do. And I think you've just got to get started. Like, take the first step, create an action plan, this is what I do, this is what I want to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. Because saying you're going to do it, if we talked about this with Mike, is a lot different than actually doing it. You have to have a plan to do. You have to have some kind of plan, understanding of how and like what your end goal is. And I think once you clearly define those, it makes it more, helps your mind understand it more, and it kind of eliminates a little bit of fear. I think a lot of the fear that we have comes from the unknown. So if you write down what you do know, it can give you a little bit more comfort when it comes to getting started on something new. But yeah, I hope that this was helpful. It's just a good conversation, honestly. I like talking about this stuff because I know I've been in that place. I've been in a place where I didn't know what was next in my life, and I had things that I wanted and dreamed of, but didn't know how to go after them. Whether it was this podcast or my current job or even anything else in life, there's still a lot of things I want to do, and I also experience that fear every day. But I'm learning how to let it be a motivator versus like a
dismotivator? That's even a word.
Not a dismotivator, but like I don't let it debilitate me, I guess.
That's the word, debilitate.
Yeah. So yeah. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We're so glad to everyone who listens on the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. We're at 21 subscribers now, and I just want to see that grow. It's not the reason that we do it, but it's so nice to see that people watch and enjoy this. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave a review, give our podcast 5 stars, or however many stars you feel like we deserve.
Or any of the other podcast platforms too.
Yeah, we're on most podcast platforms. We're still working out a couple kinks with other ones, but most podcast platforms you can find us on. So yeah, this has been Growing Together with me, Sonny Vasquez.
And me, Cesar Santos.
We hope you have a great Monday and tune in next week for our next episode.
See you guys later.